The Aptn CAJ Reconciliation Award responds to a Truth and Reconciliation Commission call to action to connect all people in Canada and recognize that the work of information and education should not fall only to Indigenous peoples. This is work that digs beneath the surface and educates us on the historic and ongoing challenges of the relationships between Canada's Indigenous peoples, those in power, and all of those who call Canada home. There are 5 finalists in this category. The first finalists are Pia Chattopadhyay, Brian Colton, Debbie Pacheco, Lisa Bryn Rundle, and Sam Colbert from CBC Radio's Out in the Open. The team's entry included pieces fairly presenting the anger over Colton Boushie's death, recorded before the trial, the question of preserving residential school buildings, how the Indigenous middle class are received within and outside of their communities, resistance to the concept of Canada 150, and this segment on how a handful of individuals would identify themselves.
Some, maybe even many, Indigenous people don't describe themselves as Canadian, even if, like you, there is some heritage of non-Indigenous people. What do you say to that? How do you feel about that?
I totally understand their view. The atrocities of residential school, the 60s scoop, that was the Canadian government doing that to our people. And, why, I can totally understand the trauma and the response to that. I mean, why would I associate myself with a society that would do that to people?
Our second group of finalists is Kristen Nelson, Josh Block, and Kathleen Goldhar of CBC Radio's The Current, with their entry titled, I Want to Understand. Ottawa Police Sergeant openly apologizes for racist comments. After a censure, sentence, and demotion for his offensive online comments, Ottawa Police Staff Sergeant Chris Arnshire could have just gone back to his routine. He didn't. Something that caught the attention of the man who filed the complaint against him, Veldon Coburn, and led to the two of them meeting to work on closing the circle.
Arnshire looks like a cop in a movie from the 80s. He has short-cropped graying hair and perfect posture. Veldon stands up to shake Chris Arnshire's hand.
How you doing? You all right?
But that quickly turns into an embrace. Arnshire buries his face into Veldon Coburn's shoulder.
Well, yeah. I'm glad to meet you too. You okay?
Well, I got a little emotional this morning.
Did you?
That it was long overdue, but
I'm glad you're here.
yeah, so am I.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, nice to see you.
Hi.
The third finalists are Amitha Kalachandran and Chelsea Jane Edwards, who submitted their piece titled A Youth-Driven Movement Remakes Attawapiskat, published by Maclean's. Probably the most many would remember of the last time this Indigenous community was in the headlines was the state of emergency declared in April 2016, after 11 suicide attempts in 24 hours. It was just the latest spike in a trend where 101 people had tried to end their lives since September 2015. This entry, which paired a journalist from outside the community with a youth leader from within, looks at reimagining Attawapiskat, a youth-led series of projects where they share their experiences using their own art presented in a variety of media. Our fourth finalist, Nancy MacDonald, also had the portfolio of work she submitted published in Maclean's. MacDonald's portfolio showed range as she included a long-form entry examining Thunder Bay's River of Tears, where too many Indigenous youth have been found dead, and too many concerns remain with how those deaths have been investigated. Another long-form entry broke new information on the delays and false starts of the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, sharing new information just as the group was heading into another round of public sessions. Other pieces in her portfolio included an interview with the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations and a look at Indigenous perspectives on the 150th anniversary of Confederation. The fifth finalist for this award is a portfolio entry from John Thompson, whose work was published online by TVO's Northwestern Ontario Hub, based out of Thunder Bay. Thompson's work shows him offering depth on 2 Thunder Bay-based articles relating to the deaths of indigenous youths in its waterways and how poorly they are handled, along with an article looking into how families and communities are reacting by pulling their kids from city schools and keeping them home. When he reports from outside the city, he showed skills in one article on First Nations police services that shared concerns from the Anishinaabe police that it didn't have the funding to maintain an adequate and safe presence for its officers. Another piece looked at the work done by one remote First Nation to lower the cost of healthier, fresher food for its residents.